Hello, everyone. This is Gary Sheffer from the Hudson Area Library, and welcome to the History Room on Zoom. On this episode, we're going to talk about the historic Hudson-Athens Lighthouse, its magnificent and really magnificent holiday lights, and of course, ongoing efforts to preserve the lighthouse. If you haven't been down to the river lately, I like to run down up the Promenade Hill steps, the new steps at Promenade Hill. It's like my Rocky steps, and look out over the river, and boy, the holiday lights, Christmas lights are really spectacular, and I really recommend going down to see them. We're going to learn on this episode how that was done, and we're also going to talk about the long-term preservation efforts underway to really save something that we were talking before we started recording. I think everyone has an image of this lighthouse in their head. It's such a part, not only of the history of this area, but really nationally, a very well-known lighthouse. It was put in operation in 1874. It was created to help vessels navigate the Hudson River near Middle Grounds Flat. It was manned until the 1950s when the lighthouse became automated. Today, it remains a navigational aid in this challenging section of the river near Hudson. And the lighthouse has been the subject of many photographers, illustrators, artists. And in fact, in 1946, an illustration of the lighthouse appeared on the cover of the then popular magazine, the Saturday Evening Post, with keeper, is it Emil J. Brunner, right, rowing out to the lighthouse? And I think he had a Christmas tree, as I remember, right, in his boat with his family waiting on deck. And he, in fact, was the last civilian lightkeeper, retiring in 1949. We have 4 people. This is the biggest crowd we've ever had on the History Room at Zoom. It's a full house today, who are dedicated to preservation of the lighthouse. Kristin Gamble is the president of the board of the Hudson-Athens Lighthouse Preservation Society. Van Calhoun and Joe Keneally are members of the board, and Kate Treacy is the director of operations. Welcome everyone to the History Room on Zoom. Kristin, let's start with you. Tell us a bit about what makes the Hudson-Athens Lighthouse so special.
Well, aside from the things you already said, Derek, the Hudson-Athens Lighthouse is the northernmost lighthouse on the Hudson River. There were others that were north of us. They no longer exist. They've been, the ravages of time and the ice flows on the river have taken them away. And there are only 2 lighthouses that are in the middle of the river. Ours, okay. Esopus Lighthouse. So I think, though, what makes it really special is everybody considers this a sense of their identity, the sense of the identity of our part of the Hudson Valley. And people really love it. They love to look at it. They love to visit it. And many people haven't been out but yearn to visit it. And in this day and age, it's unusual in that the lighthouse is not the least bit controversial. Everybody from all walks of life
exactly
love the lighthouse. And as much as they love it, they don't really think about who's responsible for it. There's kind of this automatic assumption that, oh, it must be New York State, right, or it must be the Coast Guard, or some organization or government organization. Not true. In fact, it is the Hudson-Athens Lighthouse Preservation Society, which we shorten to HALPS, meaning HALPS, not helps, but helps. And we are 100% responsible for the upkeep and the maintenance and everything that happens at the lighthouse. So I would say we own it in every sense of the word, because we actually have a deed that is a diameter of 100 feet that we own the lighthouse and going down to the bottom of the river. So we
Wow.
own it.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, exactly. No, not many people do. And so we are responsible for it. We have many members of the Hudson-Athens Lighthouse Preservation Society, and we have many volunteers. And volunteers are truly the essential part of what
Yes.
makes us function. And we are highly dependent on our volunteers, and we welcome new volunteers all the time. So that is why this is so special for our part of the Hudson Valley, because we really care about it and it speaks to everyone.
Well, I was going to say that really is true. My mother, we grew up in Hudson, and she grew up on the 200 block of Warren Street, and she loved the lighthouse.
Right.
And we had that Saturday Evening Post illustration in our home. And
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and she also had a plate to put hot things on. It's like a tile
Right.
of the lighthouse that she never used. She hung it on the wall, actually, because she liked it so much. So your point about it's a part of all of us in the Hudson Valley, I certainly know up close with my mom. She just loved the lighthouse.
Right.
So Joe, I want to turn to you. And as I said, the holiday lights, the Christmas lights are spectacular, and I know you're integral to that project. I'd like to know, I mean, how do you do it? It must be difficult to put holiday lights on the lighthouse. And so describe it to us and how it works, but also where does the electricity come from, Joe, to light up not only the holiday lights, but for the lighthouse itself?
Well, I'm glad you asked. It started, the lighthouse decoration started back in about mid-90s. I got involved in 1997. So this year was my 25th year of putting lights on the lighthouse.
Wow.
It started.
Happy anniversary, Joe.
Thank you. It started with when they were closing up the lighthouse one year. They brought out some lights and put them on the railings.
Wow.
And since that time, we've kind of increased a little bit. It usually takes about a day to put them on. We have about 10 people that go out, volunteer and go out, and we have to climb all over the roof and up and down the towers and what have you. There's about 1,200 and some odd feet of lights that go up.
Wow.
We started, when we used to do it, we did it the Friday after Thanksgiving. And we used to go out in a small boat and decorate. Now we do it at the end of October. And we turn the lights on and
I'm glad you do, because it's really beautiful. So I was serious, Joe. How do you? What's the power source, the electrical source for the lighthouse?
Well, we used to have shore power. We used to have a line that came out.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And back in about a couple of years ago, we lost all the power. It was back in September 10th of 2019. The cable broke.
Ooh.
We didn't know what we were going to do. That late in the season, we really didn't have any way of repairing it. So we got together with some people from the Hudson Powerboat Association. Scott Davis and Sonny Brignall are both professional electricians. And we had another member of the boat club that came over and gave us a hand. That was Pete Rowland.
Okay.
Electrical engineer. And we went out and we rewired the lighthouse so we could use a generator to get through the rest of the season.
Okay.
But we knew we couldn't very well run the generator from shore in the middle of the winter. But we were bound and determined that we weren't going to stop putting lights on the lighthouse. We talked about doing some type of small solar system. And the small solar system kind of built into a big solar system. Pete got a hold of a company and they helped us design the system. And with the help of some people like Van, he was one of the guys that went out and helped us on that. And Bill Palmer designed brackets to hold the solar panels on. In fact, I think Kate had a picture of showing some of the solar panels. We put these up in one day.
Wow.
We had probably about 8 guys that went out all day long, put up brackets, put up the solar panels. So now the lighthouse is 100% solar.
So for the lights inside too, Joe, and everything?
Lights inside, everything right now runs on solar.
Oh, that's great.
We
That
still
is
have the
great.
battery backup. There's the solar panels on the left-hand side.
Ah, okay.
Backs.
The backside, right, from the Hudson
Yes.
perspective, right?
So that, yeah, that's on the south side of the lighthouse.
That's great. So you're right. I hadn't seen that because they're on the backside.
Yeah. And the
Interesting.
way we put them on, they're in line with the railing. So even if you take photographs, it doesn't really show that much.
Well, good for you. That's fantastic. Well, so how long will the lights stay up for the folks who are going to watch this holiday season? When do you shut them down?
Well, they stay on until we take them down, and we probably won't get out until sometime probably in April or May before we get out there and start taking them down.
Wow.
But we only use them one season. We find that if we try and use them over again, there's usually broken wires or broken bulbs. So we discard them every year and start over again.
I hate to say it, Joe, but I'm with you. Even in my house here on my Christmas tree. I've tried everything, replacing fuses, bulbs, never works. So, well, that's fantastic. So, I hadn't thought of this until we talked. You'd have trouble getting out there, I assume, or during the winter, right? To take them down.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, we've had trouble before where the lights go out, and I can remember a couple of our members, Bob Eilenberg, one time went out in his kayak, dodging between the ice flows. He had to fix that problem. I'm going to go out and fix the problem on the lighthouse, and he did.
Oh.
He took his kayak out.
That's something I would not do, but good for him.
The
Excellent.
corollary to that is we have to take the dock in every year and put
That's
it back out in the spring, because the guys at that Powerboat Association is very helpful in that.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Well, I'm going to turn to Van now. And I've heard over the years the lighthouse has been on lists for historic buildings, structures that are threatened. I think there was 9 buildings in New York at one point I read about, and the lighthouse was one of them. And of course, you have to, it's easy to understand a building in the middle of the dynamic Hudson River would have some structural challenges after all these years. Van, what's going on with the lighthouse and efforts to preserve it? What are you looking at? What are you most concerned about as head of the preservation committee? What are you thinking about?
Well, Gary, you're right about mentioning the recognition about the lighthouse being in danger. And 2 years ago, we got a New York State 7 to Save designation from the New York State Preservation League, which kind of put us on the map of one of those important places that Kristin cited, important to the community and the area, and part of the soul of the whole area. As the picture shows, that lighthouse sits, and Kristin mentioned, right in the middle of the river, and it's had tremendous amount of flows on either side of it. Originally, the channel was on the Athens side. That's why our bell tower faces Athens. And at the turn of the century, the Coast Guard changed the channel to the Hudson side. So that had been pretty shallow, but that was dredged out as well. And the consequence of all the shipping in the Hudson River and all the changes in weather and the changes to the channels is that there's been great erosion and scouring. Those big ships, when they go by, these are ocean-going ships. People must remember, all of these is an international scene. All those boats can come from Peru or from Paris and not Paris, but Lyon, and go all the way up the Hudson River. But they displace huge amounts of water, meaning they push it aside, and every time it sloshes back in, it brings oil with it from riverbanks or from the bottom of our lighthouse. And so everything you can see there is sitting above the river, which I'll address in a minute. But what you see there, you would think sits on rock or the bottom of the river. Well, it doesn't. I brought my little aid to understanding here. And if you picture 200 wooden pilings, 200 telephone poles, basically, with a box on top of it, that's what we have in the river. And those 200 telephone poles, you can see them driven in the left picture, driven in 1872, are fine. And they're still fine as long as they're covered with river mud and dirt.
Okay.
So on top of those are the huge granite blocks replaced on top of those. Remember, on the water, in the middle of the water with steam-driven barges. And on top of that is built the house, and on top of that is done the light. So we got a kind of a wedding cake thing going on. And our major end problem will be the 100-year fix of getting those pilings covered back up so they'll stop eroding. If they're allowed to, if they're exposed to the water, that they'll rot, and then we'll have a problem and we could lose our lighthouse.
So
But-
Van, the poles themselves and the structure, wooden structure that supports the granite, they're fine. You just need to have the silt to the mud, all of that surrounding them so they don't rot. Is that what, am I understanding?
They are structurally integral right now, even though on the leading edge, they're exposed to the water, which means they won't last very long that way. So sometime in the next 10 years, we've got to get those covered back up or we'll lose them. They've become a little unstable, and we have had cracking already in the big granite blocks, and also cracking in the brickwork up on top of it, because the whole thing moves a little bit like that.
Right.
So in the end, we will probably be putting what's known as a curtain wall all the way around the lighthouse to secure it, a metal wall like you'll see on a modern waterfront, and backing that in. And our plan, our board discussed this 2 years ago. I'm so sorry about that.
No problem.
And the board decided that we could try for a 10-year fix. It wouldn't cost us so much, and we'd get 10 years. We could try for a 30-year fix, and we might get a generation. But we decided to go for the 100-year fix. So we're in process of engineering that surround, but in the immediate level, we have to worry about what's above the water that we can see.
Exactly.
We've had water intrusion coming through the roof on top. And the slate work of the windows in the roof area is deteriorating, and the beautiful architectural have really gone their course and deteriorated. And the brickwork is cracked and needs to be pointed, and a lot of the windows don't fit squarely anymore. That's all a result of the movement from underneath and the terrible beating that this poor lighthouse takes during all the seasons. So that's our big push right now, is to get that secure, get the funding, and get our engine going, that we can get to the contracting point and begin those repairs to protect the house on top. And then we'll work our way down, and we'll get to that bottom afterwards.
And on the bottom, Van, how much, let's say nothing is done. How much time do you have before it begins to become a real problem? In other words,
within 10 years, we will begin to have a real problem.
Okay.
We certainly would, because we're getting movement now, and we've lost soil at a rapid. The more soil you lose, the more you're going to lose. It's a rapid progression after a certain point. The ships aren't getting any smaller. That lighthouse was surrounded by boulders bigger than Volkswagens originally, and on the Hudson side and on the north side, the boulders are gone. They've been pulled into the shipping channel, and they're not even there anymore. They're 100 feet away, if you can imagine, being moved away. So it's happening more quickly. We've had gauges on it for the last 10 years since work was done 10 or 12 years ago. It can show us that the cracks are getting wider faster.
Yeah, sure.
So cracks getting wider faster above indicate a lot going on down underneath. So we need to get this project underway.
It sounds like it. Ben, just curious, one last question for you. How do you know what's going on down at the bottom of the river?
But we were fortunate early on in this project, we were gonna go the kind of standard route and have divers go take measurements as best they can. And the river's very silty. You can't see in there. You have to do it all by feel and touch. But we used a new technology called LiDAR, which is actually a form of radar. And these shots that you'll see of the lighthouse show all the data that's collected from that LiDAR, beaming its beams in and taking them back. And then all those points are put on in a program. And so they actually have built this picture. This is the real picture of what we really look at. But it was all taken from an underwater LiDAR pinging, going around and around and around the lighthouse and pinging it and getting the readings back on it. And we're so fortunate because we have this actually in 3D, and you can drive around it and see.
That's amazing.
Real live what it is. So that's been the basis of our plan, and that really tells us what we have and what we have to do.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, Van. That's really fascinating. So, Kristin, I'm going to come back to you. That obviously something that everyone wants to see preserved and a big need financially. What can people do to help?
Well, there are various ways to help. Certainly financially is one, but also volunteering and participating in our projects is another way. We have been very active on the getting started in the fundraising effort. As Van has said, we really have several phases to this project. It'll be a multi-year project and several phases to it. We happily, about a year ago, got a $500,000 grant from New York State, for which we needed to raise $180,000 as a match for that. We've been busy this year working on that. And I'm happy to say we have raised the $180,000. All really through local people and local businesses that have really risen to the occasion. And I think it's really important that that's a validation of how important the lighthouse is to our local communities. Yeah. But the next round, we have an application in currently for another $500,000 or so from New York State, written by, we have a really wonderful grant writer, Sue Seneca. And so we have that in. We're hoping to get a positive read back on that soon. And we have a couple of other grants outstanding that we've applied for, and we hope to get more on that. We will have to raise another $180,000. So right. It's an ongoing effort. And the big one at the end is going to be the working on the pilings underneath. And that's going to be, a several $1 million effort. So it's a little uncertain exactly how much. I have to say, it's a lot more expensive working in the middle of the river. You can't just drive a truck up, and unload it. It's a very tricky. So everything costs more, which is too bad. But the word getting out is really the most important starting point, and making people aware. And I think, whatever people can do in terms of donating to the effort is a big one. That you can go to our website, which is helps.org, and hit the donate button, or send a check to our post office box 145 in Athens, New York, 12015, or just go to contact any one of us, and we will lead you to the right place.
Okay, excellent. We'll put all the contact information on this video.
Great.
So that people can access it as well. So one last question is the tours of the lighthouse. When do you do tours? Lots of people are quite interested. I see online lots of writing about the tours. So you do those obviously during the summer. How can
Yeah.
people access a tour of the lighthouse?
So we actually, in this past season, we actually doubled the number of tours we did, which was a big effort and really important and well received. So there are two variations. Waterfront Wednesdays in Hudson, there are free tours that go out and paid for by the city of Hudson. And then also on there started Waterfront Thursdays in Athens this past summer. And so they too are now getting free tours out to the lighthouse in the middle of the week. And then in the summertime, July through October, we do tours. We did tours this past summer on the second Saturdays from Athens, second Saturday of each month. And then on the fourth Saturdays of the month, we do from the Hudson waterfront. And so we really doubled our tours. Those are the open ones to the public, but we also do a lot of private events. And so people can, rent the lighthouse for a day.
That's great.
And have, a birthday party or, some event, a neighborhood party out there. And people have a grand time. They really do.
I bet. Well, this has been really great and something, as you say, Kristin, something everybody seems to care about in the area, the Hudson-Athens Lighthouse. It was originally called the Hudson City Lighthouse
It was
when it was first put in service. So thank you all, Kristin, Joe, Van, and Kate, who has been cycling through the photos that you've been seeing. And I hope everyone will go to the website or write a check to help support this fantastic work that you're doing. And I really recommend over the next few months to either on the Athens side or the Hudson side, get down and see the holiday lights as the sun goes down. It's a really special thing. So thanks to you all.
We thank you for reaching out to us and giving us this opportunity. This is wonderful. We thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. Happy to do it. Well, thanks everybody for watching another History Room on Zoom, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. Thank you.